Hello and welcome to NOV Live International. I'm Michael Gaines, host of the podcast NOV Today, and we are excited to have you here with us as we kick off our second day of tech conversations across our industry. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the BPS or burst port system with our subject matter expert, Aju Abraham. And we're going to be talking with him about that technology, applications, and additional insight into that space of the industry. But before we get to Iju, we're going to go ahead and head over to Shelby Dumaine, who is our social media manager, to get some insight on how you can be a part of today's conversation. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. So you watching at home, if at any point throughout the show you have any questions for Michael or for Aju, go ahead and ask them in the comments below, whether you're, again, on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and we're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can. I'm live in the questions right now throughout the show, so post them at any point, and we're going to get to as many as possible.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Shelby. All right. So as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about the burst port system, which is an innovative toe sleeve technology that has really helped many throughout the region, especially in the space of completion. So I want to bring in our technical expert now, Aju Abraham, who is the Global Research and Development Director here at NOV. Hey, Aju, thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Michael.
All right, so let's just kind of jump in and have you give us a little insight. So, you know, the burst port system or BPS. Give me a little insight on that. What is this technology?
So, like you said, BPS stands for burst port system, right? And you know, it's a tool we have in our tool set that we use. There's multiple applications for it. I mean, it could be used for a conventional completion applications, to create a flow path, whether it's from internal to external, external to internal. Can be used in multi-stage stimulation, where you can use these ports to stimulate a stage. And in North America especially, it's been highly used as a toe sleeve. And what I mean by a toe sleeve is that, you know, when you do your typical plug and perf completion, you need a way to initiate a flow path so you can pump your guns and pump your plugs in the hole. So the application is called a toe sleeve. That's very popular in the US and North America especially, and it's been a great tool for us.
Right. Yeah, and I know that this particular technology has several applications. Can you talk about the typical ones that you normally would use the BPS in?
So the two of the most common ones we use that is one for multi-stage stimulation, where you would run a multiple of these tools in each stage, and you open it up, you straddle those BPS with a cup-to-cup tool for isolation or a packer to isolation, and then you just bust them. So you get the same effect as perforating, a casing, and have 3, 4, 5 stages as you may need. And the second most common application, especially in the North America, has been the toe sleeve, where this is used typically at the end of the string, where you want to initiate a flow path so you can pump your guns and you pump your plugs with it, because you're running them on a wire line, so you need to pump it to get to your target depth. So that is the two main applications of the system that we commonly use.
Okay. And for those that just joined us, we're talking to Aju Abraham, who is the Global Research and Development Director, and we're talking about the BPS burst port system technology. So, Aju, I know that you're the BPS is no exception in terms of being a technology that's been developed with a specific purpose, and obviously with the idea of serving customers in the best way possible. So when we're looking at this particular application, can you talk about, what makes this, what makes the BPS different from other sleeves, and maybe even more so, what are some of the unique characteristics that really help stand it apart from other solutions?
So if you just talk specifically about toe sleeves, one of the most common type of tools that's out there is called it's a type of a sliding sleeve. So when you talk about a sliding sleeve, you essentially have a sleeve that slides open and close ports, right? So there's moving parts, there's seals in the things can go wrong and may not open. And if it doesn't open, you have to go back with the traditional tubing conveyed guns to create the flow path. So it can become a really costly exercise if this tool doesn't work. So what's beautiful about the BPS is that there's no moving parts. It's a tool with an array of these burst discs. And one of the beauty of these burst discs is that they open on absolute pressure. The key here is that our tool has an atmospheric chamber, so that makes it to open very at the design pressure, within the plus or minus 2%. That's incredible. And to get that kind of accuracy downhole, because it allows us, because if things don't work at the right pressure, there are other tools in the system that is also based on pressure. So if this particular tool doesn't open on time, it creates problem for the subsequent operation. So that's the beauty of this tool. No moving parts, highly reliable, and opens every time. So that's what distinguishes it from other tools, and that's one of the reasons it has become highly popular and has been increasing market share every year.
Okay. So, and I know that folks watching, they'll start to put some questions in. If you're watching now, if you have questions for Aju on this technology or any of its applications or other insights, feel free to put those in the comment section, and we'll start to get to the Q&A in just a moment. But I wanted to maybe talk a little bit more, actually, on what you just said in terms of looking at the way that you have the burst discs here versus the more conventional approach or alternative approaches, especially when you're talking about using pressure. I think there's some that are familiar with that, but I'd love for you to maybe expand on that a little bit more, because I think that's something that's a really key insight. Maybe can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that someone could face if they're using a toe sleeve that relies on pressure?
So typically, when it talks of pressure, pressure is one of the easiest way to use in downhole tools, right? I mean, there's not many ways you can, manipulate a tool downhole. Either it's like tension, compression, torsion, or pressure, right? So when it comes to pressure, there's a couple of pressures you can use. One is, differential pressure, where you're basically basing out the outside pressure, inside pressure for a tool to work. And this could be, kind of tricky because, it's very hard to predict the pressure downhole because, the fluid changes, the hydrostatic pressure changes, and so things of that nature. So if the tool is based on a differential pressure, there may be issues that, that it will not open at the right pressure. If you have a tool at absolute pressure and no moving parts like this tool has, so what pressure you set it up for, and it opens exactly within plus or minus 2%. And that is very incredible because that makes sure that it opens every time. It allows the customer to have a high degree of confidence in the subsequent operations that come behind it. So that's the key thing. That's two things. If you want to take back is that no moving parts. It opens on the absolute pressure. Hence, it doesn't depend on any of those variables downhole, but it opens as planned, as designed that you would in an operation.
So, as we start looking at the BPS, I know that you and the team have worked on, having this deployed in several areas. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the track history and where this has been deployed, generally speaking?
So it's like I said earlier, it's highly popular in the North America, right? We're US and Canada, right? But at the same time, we have thousands of runs in Russia, we have thousands of run in the Middle East, if you're also introducing the Latin America. So we have runs pretty much across, and now we've been introducing it in the Asia. So it's kind of a global product in terms of where it's being used today. But the highest number or the highest density of the applications, is in the North America.
Okay. So, of course, another item that is certainly important to tackle is talking about reliability. So what can you share with us on the BPS reliability front?
Yeah, so from reliability standpoint, if we got the well parameters, everything we have and the tool works every time. I mean, it works, I don't want to get into the 100 percentage, but it's a high percentage, on the 99 percentage every time it opens, right? So it's a highly reliable tool, and that's one of the reasons why it has become so popular for the use. Because once a customer uses it, trials it, and he sees it, and then he changes into the application. And one of the things that has become a kind of a common, not a common, but started to gain traction is that we're using this toe sleeve as the toe frac. In other words, just like you would frac a stage where you have multiple subs and you frac it, you would run multiple of these things in a string, and you can basically frac the toe. Typically in a toe sleeve application you use for flow initiation, but you can essentially you lose that toe section. But in case of using this BPS, multiple strings of BPS, you can actually fracture the toe. This allows us to have more oil production through the entire well. So, and this particular thing has, we have several major operators gone to that, see the value in it, and has been very successful. And we're taking it to other customers at the same time. So it not only it acts as a toe initiation, but we're also getting a toe frac that adds value to the customer.
Right. And so I think that actually will lead us into starting to get to some of the questions that I see, and I'm looking down at the secondary monitor here, so I see questions coming in on some of our social media channels. So I want to get over to Shelby Dumaine, and Shelby, see if you can start to get some of those questions that folks have in the comments for Aju.
Sure, Michael. So we have one question. This came from Garima on LinkedIn, and they were wondering what the applications are and how cost effective the technology is.
So it's not a very complex tool. In a downhole technology, we always like to keep it simple, because the more simple the tool is, the higher reliable it is, right? So it is it's priced right for the customer. It gets extremely high value of the product, in terms of the reliability and what he pays for it and what value he gets out of it. So it's a highly value added product for the customer. What was the second part? Was it to ask for applications?
Yes, it was the cost effectiveness, and then what are some applications of the technology?
So I mentioned about the applications. This tool can be used pretty much in a lot of applications where you need a flow path, right? So one of the most common applications we use is for a toe initiations. Create a flow path. So if you run a plug and perf application, you're able to pump in your guns and plugs and whatnot. And we also use this for multi-stage stimulation, that you can have like, 2, 3, or 5 of these, tools at a stage, and you can have it 10 stages or 15 stages, and you go in with a straddle tool, which is either a cup-to-cup packer or a packer to packer, and you can go basically stimulate each of these zone independently. So, and also this is used when you want to create a flow path. Sometimes customers want to switch fluid from the annulus to the internal of the tubing, or internal tubing circulation. They can use it wherever they need a way to create a flow path to switch fluids, right? So, I mean, the applications can be used in many, but the most common ones, like I said, is in multi-stage frac and toe sleeves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. And then, so we had another one. Could you talk a little bit about, this is Mustafa on LinkedIn. They're wondering what the maximum circulation hours are and what happens if you exceed those maximum circulation hours.
There is really no limit like that, because this, you can be in the hole as long as you don't breach the pressure it is set at. You can run it as long as typically, the operations in the North America are fairly quick, but we have history of leaving this in the tool for a long time and coming back and opening it. So there's no like a practical limit. As long as you can get pressure to this tool, you should be able to open it every time.
Mm-hmm. And then we got another one. This is also from LinkedIn. They're wondering if you could talk a little bit about the ignition pressure that is needed for the BPS.
So we can, this can be set at any pressure. We have pressures all the way from, I would say, 5,000 PSI or even less in some cases. and go all the way up to close to 20,000 psi, because it helps, because as you go deeper, and since it works on absolute pressure, you go deeper and deeper, your initiation pressures will go higher and higher. So it's practically, it covers, we haven't come into a situation where it hasn't met the requirement of the well. So it has a wide array of initiation pressures.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then we also had a few questions, and they were asking about where the BPS are either in action or where they're available.
Well, it can be made available anywhere, but from a global footprint, it's available in the Middle East, it's available in the Asia Pacific, it's available in the North America, as you know, and in the Latin America. So these are the places where we commonly run them, but it can be, basically any customer anywhere can have it if they need it.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then I think we have one more that I can see right now. They're wondering, this comes from Nidal on LinkedIn. How is it deployed in the well?
Typically, it's run in the tubing that you run in the well, right? I mean, common cases in the U.S. is typically run on a 5.5 tubing, right, or completion string, right? But you can run it on whatever, you just put whatever threads at the end of it to complement your casing string or tubing string, and you can run with it, right?
All right. No, those are some really good questions that we have coming in on social. I have one for you as well. Aju, can you talk about using multiple burst port systems in an application? Is that something that we've seen? I know that we saw just kind of a standalone picture, but I suspect you potentially can run those in tandem. Is that right?
That's right. I just mentioned a little while ago that a popular application in the North America has been, we are running this thing 3 or 5 at one time, and this allows, it kind of simulates the same application as a plug and perf, where you would just set a plug and you have guns, and you would perforate like 4 or 5 times, so you can stimulate those zones. So you can essentially run whatever the numbers is convenient for the completion design. And then you go straddle it. You will put a packer or an isolation device on the top and the bottom, and you pressure up. So you can open it all at the same pressure, just like you would do, right? So in a stimulation application. So people have, we've used them like, in the US, as I said, is mostly on the toe sleeve side of it, or the toe side of the well. But you can use this, in other places in Russia and the Far East. We've used it as a multi-stage, where you would put multiple of them in each of the stage, let's say 10 stages, and go in with an isolation tool, and you're able to open it. So you can use multiple of these things, in the stages as you want.
Okay, great. Well, I know that we've had some really good questions in social, and the challenge, of course, always is that additional questions come up that we're not able to get to on the program. So for those that are interested in learning more about the BPS or the burst port system, or would like to further the conversation, you can send an email to Aju Abraham at NOV.com. That's AJU.ABRAHAM at NOV.com. And we can definitely circle around with you to further the conversation. I appreciate the perspective. I know it's been really insightful for me, and I know for those that are watching as well. But yeah, we see that if we haven't gotten to your question in the comments, we'll certainly want to touch base with you there. So Aju, thanks so much for the time and perspective today.
Thank you very much. You all have a good day.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to be continuing our coverage this week on the NOV Live International, as we look next to talk about NOV's aftermarket services and support. And we'll be having a couple of our experts there as well. So again, thanks for joining us today. Keep the comments coming, and we look forward to continuing our conversation a little bit later today. So for us here at NOV, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.